So Jérôme, first question to you is how did asset managers with fund ranges covering both UK and Continental Europe restructure their fund ranges based on what you've seen in your practice?
Managers had different starting points. The larger managers, typically the UK ones, already had two ranges of funds, one in the UK for domestic purposes and one in the EU. In that case, the impacts were minimal. Others had no European range, and in that case, they really had to set up a European range or expand the ranges that they might have had in Ireland or in Luxembourg. What we've seen is that very often they merged the non-sterling classes of their UK ranges into Luxembourg funds. That allowed them to have a more orderly transfer of clients, create critical masses when they had to create new sub-funds, and a much more client-friendly move. And then finally, what we have not yet seen, but might be coming, are European managers needing to penetrate the UK market with UK funds, because we know that a number of UK investors, and particularly UK intermediaries, prefer UK funds. Because of the temporary permissions, currently it's still possible to sell the Luxembourg funds into the UK, but it remains to be seen if going forward they will not need to also duplicate their ranges in that direction.
Now my second question to you would be, a marketing team is based in London and he wants to distribute funds in Europe. What is permitted today?
One should first distinguish between the product rules and the licensing requirements. The product rules depend on the funds, and obviously to sell a fund in a European country, the fund needs to be available in that European country, which means that it needs to have been passported, or one needs to have used the private placement regime. And then the second question is, who has the right to sell that fund into that country? And there it's either a locally licensed a regulated entity, it's a European entity with a passport, and therefore comes the question, what happens to the UK that has lost that passport? Some countries seem to be very strict, and they consider that going forward, a UK entity has no right to have any type of direct contact with their investors. But a majority of European countries seem to be much more relaxed, and they consider that as long as they don't cross a certain line, as long as they don't perform what is deemed to be a regulated activity in that jurisdiction, then they can operate from the UK. And that might mean sending documentation that are not subscription form, non-finalized documents, etc., interacting with the investors. Again, it's all a question of determining where is this red line. And as I said, it's a country-by-country analysis. There is a clear distinction between managers. The managers, UCITS-type managers that have plenty of fund ranges and they're permanently fundraising. In that case, reality is that it's very difficult not to have teams based in the EU to market those funds. But other managers only market during certain periods of time. Typically the real estate or the private equity managers, they have a predetermined marketing period. And there it's much easier to try to find solutions, in particular because their clients are very different. Usually it's a very high number of existing clients. They typically don't have to travel into the EU. They just post documents on websites. And they therefore feel that they could, at least in the first stage, avoid building a regulated presence in the EU.
Now, Jérôme, if we come to a conclusion, the last question would be, if I listen well to what you said, any firm having presence in Europe, a large firm, will not be too affected. But if you look at other asset classes, other situations, what would be your advice in terms of short-term fixes and solutions? There
is no secret. So ultimately, the UK should be treated like Switzerland or like the US, no better and not in a worse manner. But it means, like those players, that the large managers ultimately will need to establish a presence in the EU. Americans typically, unfortunately for them, had chosen London, and they'll probably need to find another jurisdiction going forward to base most of their marketing teams. But I also think that certain solutions might work. So we often talk about secondments, we talk about chaperoning. I think none of those solutions can work if ultimately the idea is that marketing teams based in the UK remain there and just use the license of a European entity. But under certain conditions, it seemed very possible that those marketing teams really be seconded, and maybe part of the time, especially for certain managers, they raise money for 6 months. Maybe those people could be seconded during a period of 6 months to a European entity. I also believe that chaperoning might be an option already today. Together with the marketing people, you can have asset managers that travel with them. And provided there's a reality that you have sufficiently senior people that take the lead to the marketing, I don't really see why you can't, in addition, involve UK staff in those roadshows, for example. So hopefully we will find a reasonable solution which indeed will allow UK marketing people to continue to operate in the EU under certain conditions. And I believe that this is everyone's best interest.